Robert Kingsbury Lane was born on September 1st, 1944, the first son of Jack and Trudy Lane in Los Angeles, an older brother to Christopher. Robert was a third-generation Californian raised in Pacific Palisades and received his high school diploma from the Harvard School, a private boys' school in Los Angeles. A lifelong learner, Robert went on to the University of California at Berkeley, where he pursued many academic passions, including architecture and photography, but from which he graduated with a degree in history focused on Russian history, and at the time of graduating, considering being a military attaché in Kiev. At Berkeley, Robert made many of his enduring friendships as a member of the Psi Upsilon fraternity, and upon graduation, what he chose to do was to return to Los Angeles to study law at Loyola School of Law, earning his Juris Doctor. After graduating from law school and before starting his legal career, Robert was called to serve in the U.S. Army. He had gone through Cal on the ROTC program, and this was the service he had committed to. Robert would serve as a first lieutenant and was stationed in Baltimore, Maryland. It was a time of social and political upheaval, and he was against the war in Vietnam, but served faithfully until it looked like his service might entail active combat, and the moral implications of that became real. And so Robert applied for and received, not without some roadblocks, his conscientious objector status. It was, however, during his time in Baltimore on April 14th, 1970, to be exact, that while off one day, Robert walked by the Peabody Institute in the Mount Vernon neighborhood. He was taken both by the gorgeous architecture and also by the most extraordinary music coming out of the windows. So he let himself into the building and wandered around until he found a floor of private practice rooms. And at an out-of-the-way room, he heard someone playing the most extraordinary pipe organ piece, and so Bob came in and sat down, completely uninvited, and remained there for the 3 hours that the musician practiced that day. The next week, at the same time, Robert returned, letting himself in again to this practice room and quietly taking his seat to listen again to hours as the musician practiced. The musician, of course, was Reiko Oda. The third week, Robert introduced himself as Bob from California. Reiko's first question was, "Are you a hippie?" He said he was not, and so the friendship began. The courtship began. The fourth week, he brought a poem he had written in his characteristic, beautiful handwriting. While she would play, it turns out he would write poetry. Then a week or so later, Robert told Reiko, "You practice too much," and insisted that they go out for ice cream, and the rest is Reiko and Bob history. They would marry. Robert's mother would plan the wedding. Robert's father would walk the bride down the aisle, and Robert would ask Reiko to play the prelude at her own wedding. And so the formal beginning of their life together as a couple commenced. Robert was released from the Army finally, and the couple moved to California, to the Bay Area, but only after Robert did research and found out that there was a fitting organ and it was available for Reiko to practice on. Neither he nor she would let Reiko's music and her gift be sidelined. In fact, as many of you, I'm sure, no doubt know, when they bought the house in Piedmont where they would raise their family, Robert made sure there was a room, one he designed and had built, with 15-foot ceilings to accommodate the pipes and organ that Reiko needed to practice, and never complained when she did just that. Reiko and Robert would have 3 children. Their marriage would last 50 years. Robert would be a great father and an adoring, supportive husband, and he would build a thriving legal practice. Fiercely principled, staunchly free-thinking, and endlessly engaged, Robert was a vigorous advocate for his clients, friends, and loved ones, and a global citizen. Over the many decades that he practiced law under his own banner, our Kingsbury Lane Incorporated, he was never known to market his services. Referrals and long-term contacts made up his loyal client list. His focus was largely business and real estate transactions and litigation, but he always, since his time at Berkeley, was a supporter of the environmental movement. And he always kept an active interest in the world, in things like how justice was or was not being served in the larger scope of national politics, for instance. As recently as November of 2021, he was writing quite pointed letters, including one I'll read from in a moment, to the Office of Legal Counsel of the United States Department of Justice in Washington. The excerpt goes, regarding, complaint, Merrick Garland's lack of spine. Dear Mr. Schroeder, Robert introduces himself and his qualifications. I follow politics somewhat closely, and I'm extremely concerned that your boss, Merrick Garland, may not have the spine to do what he needs to do to save this democracy. I think he would have made a better Supreme Court justice. Mr. Garland needs to take a deep breath and charge Steve Bannon and anyone else not complying with a congressional subpoena. The department needs to act quickly in each and every instance and not put its thumb up its bleep to see which way the wind is blowing. Please give the Department of Justice back its name and reputation for standing up for justice, not playing political wait-and-see games. The letter goes on. As dad to Nisa, Mari, and Lindsay, Robert was a coach, a tutor, a musical troupe manager, camp leader, 4th of July fireworks scofflaw, party favor distributor, constant champion and lifelong trusted advisor on things great and small. He never missed a concert or performance, changing court dates if he needed to in order to be there. Perhaps above all, Robert instilled in his daughters the importance of independent thinking, of self-reliance, and fighting for what you believe in. He modeled these values himself in the ways we heard earlier, in the ways many of you know, but also as a constant, vocal, action-oriented proponent of social and environmental justice. Robert had another side to him too, the artistic side. He viewed the world through the lens of an artist. His poetry, that poetry he wrote in the practice room in Mount Vernon and was writing throughout his life, it captured the motion and the essence of its subjects. His camera seized the candid, the wild, the unexpected, the golden moments. His sketches were never constrained by what was, only by what could be. Earlier this year, our congregation lost another beautiful spirit and human being, a woman who was also a lawyer who fought for social change. When she passed away, Robert wrote a poem for her father, knowing, I'm sure, as a father, just what an unspeakable loss Gordon was enduring. The poem was titled Elegy for a Lovely Lily. And when Robert passed away, Gordon sent his condolence note and a copy of the poem to Reiko. Written November 21st of 2021, it reads, "When death comes too soon, it upsets the continuity of what we thought, assumed, presumed our lives were supposed to look like. That snapshot of the future we settled in the present. But rather, or perhaps at this point, we've already begun our collection of lovely, smooth, but heavy, multifaceted stones to forever carry in our hearts." Robert Kingsbury Lane was on vacation with his family in Santa Cruz, pockets filled with beach treasures, his grandchildren, his wife, his children close at hand, alive to the beauty of the ocean and the sky and the sea when he suffered a life-ending heart attack. And with that loss, a multifaceted and heavy stone was added to what Reiko and Nisa and Mari and Lindsay and so many others of his beloved family and friends have added to the collection of such stones that we carry in our hearts. Robert's daughters wrote of their father's life and their loss. In our overwhelming grief at losing him, we try to see his life as he would, beautifully and uncommonly well lived. So may it be for us all.